So 2016 today, I read global reports that talk about how South Africa is lagging behind when it comes to entrepreneurial activity. I listen to conversations that say South African entrepreneurs lack innovation and lack creativity. They say that we have little or no women entrepreneurs, and that being a developing nation, we mainly have necessity entrepreneurs, which are those entrepreneurs who end up starting a business when they cannot find a job, as opposed to opportunity-driven entrepreneurs. And these are people who see an opportunity, take the risk, and jump into it. Being a practitioner in the entrepreneurship development space, I somehow have a different experience when I'm on the ground, and the narrative is different. Let me give you a better picture. Earlier this year, I was part of the team that adjudicated on the Township Entrepreneur Awards, the very first ever Township Entrepreneur Awards hosted by the province. I was very thrilled and excited to receive the request to participate. And I had my own interest, obviously, over and above the adjudication. But what I really wanted to do was to go and explore the province's entrepreneurs and go into the township environment and actually understand what businesses do we have, what type of businesses, what is the variety of businesses that are in the township space. And secondly, who is behind these businesses? What are the characteristics of these entrepreneurs? Are they young? Are they old? Educated? How far did they go in their education? Do they have a previous employment history? And so we went about with the adjudication. I think there were probably 300 plus people that applied. After all the shortlisting and the few that were selected, we had about 100 and odd that were shortlisted, and then we went out to do the site visits. And this was traveling throughout the province, literally in all the corners, all the way far east, far west, far north, far south. And coming back and reflecting on what I saw, on my first question that I had on the variety of entrepreneurs, I was not surprised, because indeed there's a huge variety of businesses. It really confirmed my suspicion. Township business is no longer just mainly retail. There's a whole lot of manufacturing that is taking place and services business. But when it came to the second one, I was very startled. And the reason being is that most of the entrepreneurs that we visited during the site visit had previous employment. They actually left their job, saw an opportunity, risked their assets, and jumped into this business. Now, that is something that we do not see in the global reports. And so I began to ask myself a number of questions to say, where is the disjoint? And why does the narrative on the ground, why is it different on the ground versus to what you are constantly hearing? And in this process of reflecting, I was asking myself, are we really that far off? And those of you who've read those reports, you probably do get that feeling. Are we really that far off? And what is the baseline that we are using to measure how far we've come as a country? So in this pondering, I then went about and decided to have a look at what has really been going on in the entrepreneurship space. And I decided to use 1994 as my baseline. Now, you may wonder why 1994. The reason being, obviously, pre-1994, Black business was hugely suppressed and had boundaries in terms of where and how it could operate. And with the low levels of education and little access to freedom in economic participation, there was little room for Black business to grow. So if we are going to grow entrepreneurship in this country, and if we're going to grow it significantly, that difference is actually going to come from encouraging Black business and getting more Black business entrepreneurs out there. Hence, I then looked at it from that perspective. So I put together the slide, and I'd like to draw your attention to it. It is a very full slide, and it's supposed to be. If I was to put more, stuff would probably fall out. But it is supposed to look like a full slide. Because this slide, for me, indicates what exactly has been happening in our country from 1994 to 2016. And I've kind of color-coded just to give an indication of what I've looked at. So 1995, we had the first ever white paper on national strategy and promoting SME development in the country. That just became almost a leeway that opened up a whole lot of other legislation or legislative changes that came. We've got legislation on skills development, entrepreneurial education, Black economic empowerment, enterprise development, socio-economic development, supplier development, and even supplier diversity. These are all some of the things that have happened in the legislation and regulatory environment to foster an enabling environment for entrepreneurs. A quick glance at the dark gray color. That represents all the things that are happening when it comes to SME support. We've had incubators in the past. I'm sure we had some incubators pre-1994, but there are not nearly as many as the number of incubators that we have today. Accelerator programs that are there to support entrepreneurs that are at a growth phase, that are saying, I've done the startup thing, I'm now growing. Can I get more support? Can I get to the next level? Business linkages, supporting and facilitating access to market. Because historically, it's always been the access that has actually kept people from participating. Access to information, access to market, and access to finance. And on access to finance, today we've got venture capitalist funds, we have franchise funds, we have, in fact, there's a huge partnership between the Job Fund and the franchise financing, structured finance solutions where entrepreneurs who have contracts or purchase orders can now actually get finance to be able to deliver on those services. All these, when I reflect and look at this, it is interesting to note that they happened and they are happening, and it's a participation of both public sector, private sector, NGO sectors, and to a certain extent, the international community. So this just gives us an indication of all the things that are happening. And like I say, I did not put everything here because it would have just fallen off, and you can barely read it now, so if I put everything, you wouldn't be able to read it. So if I had to take another angle and look at the number of businesses that are starting up on a daily basis, there are so many people that are starting businesses, and I'm sure within your circles, you meet people all the time who are either, like we've heard earlier this morning, either leaving their jobs for the boss saying, thank you, you're fired, or have decided they actually want to join this entrepreneurship journey. More and more people are starting businesses. So if I was to draw that graph, it will probably be yo-yoing, but it is definitely an upward trend. If I had to draw the graph on entrepreneurial conversations that are currently taking place in this country, I'm so convinced that it is definitely a very steep curve. And for those of guys who live in the province, you'll know almost every week there are conversations on entrepreneurship on all different platforms, whether be it conferences, be it just networking events, they are constantly happening. And the third graph that I kind of have in my mind is the one on role models. Pre-1994, we had probably a handful of role models, entrepreneurial role models. 2016, we definitely have a lot more role models in the entrepreneurial space. They may not be as steep as the entrepreneurial conversations, but the curve is definitely going up. And that is why sometimes I do get a little bit, whenever I see someone or people who are promoting entrepreneur in South Africa and present role models, but they're presenting all the old role models. the term old, I refer to pre-1994, not old in terms of their age, although that may be true also. But the point I'm trying to bring is we have a whole new breed of fresh entrepreneurs in this country that are doing amazing things. We've got amazing ideas that are somehow not being captured and not being engaged. So my reflection on this is really saying the narrative has changed, and the narrative is changing. So why are we constantly stuck in the old narrative? And the reason why I ask this is because I come from a space where in 2009, I founded a company who focuses on supporting entrepreneurs. Our goal is really to create win-win solutions for both the corporates and the entrepreneurs by matching what it is that the entrepreneur needs, rather what it is that the corporate needs, and how does the corporate integrate SMEs or small businesses or entrepreneurs into their value chain, and how do we then support that entrepreneur to be able to access the opportunity, both from a finance perspective and from a capacity building perspective. So I often sit on the other side of the table and get asked, where are these entrepreneurs? Rather, do we have entrepreneurs? So 7 years ago, when we started the business, I would sit on the other side of the boardroom table and I would get told, but we don't have these businesses. Where do we find these businesses? And I would sit on the other side and really struggle to answer the question. I fast-track now 7 years later. Ask me for a business in a black woman-owned business, a competent black woman-owned business in agribusiness. I'll tell you, I'll find one for you. Ask me for a black woman-owned business in aviation. I'll find one for you. Engineering services, manufacturing, dust control, sectors that previously you would not be able to find a black-owned business. Today, we can find them. So my view really is that if we go back to the slide, this is all part of sowing. It is a process of planting. And I believe South Africa is in that phase where we are planting. We have begun to taste the fruit of the harvest, but we have not really harvested yet. We are still planting. And what happens when one plants? The farmers will tell you, you can't sow and reap at the same time, the same crop, right? There's a process of planting and sowing. You water, you weed, you wait, and then you reap the fruit or the harvest. So with all this sowing that is happening, we need to weed as well. And we are in the process of weeding because some of our policies, some of our conversations, and some of our programs have unfortunately created unintended consequences. And that is what we are weeding out. But we are still reaping. We still have a harvest that we are reaping, albeit early stage. So my question really, I would like to say, let us change the question. The question is not, who are they? Rather, the question should not be about, we don't have entrepreneurs, or do they exist? Thank you.